Okay.
I think he's muted.
You muted yourself, Rich, I think.
I was saying some great stuff too.
There we go. There we go.
Somebody
now we got you.
I thought it was on purpose.
Right. So we are actually now live on Facebook. So I want to welcome everybody to the Urbanitus Education and COVID-19 webinar, Facebook Live event. Really excited to be here. I want to shout out to Robert, who's doing our technology stuff for us and is recording everything. So we'll have this archived. But I want to thank our panelists for making the time to be here. It's a Friday afternoon. I know you have a million things to do. So why don't we start with Natalie? And if you could just introduce yourself and tell us how you interact with the education system and anything else you want to share with us.
Hi, I'm Natalie. I'm a rising senior at McCallum, and I play basketball. That's what I do in my free time, amongst other things. So the online school that we had during the spring is going to be very different from the online school we're going to have now. But from the online school in the spring, what I really liked about it was that since it was pass-fail, I sort of had more time to focus on how much I love learning, because it's really easy to get caught up in just the grades. So I sort of liked how I could sort of pick and choose more about what I wanted to study. I think the hardest part for me about COVID and school during COVID is the lack of social interaction, because normally during school you have interactions with people in your class next to you, and I really missed that. I think I usually talk to like 30 people a day, and now I talk to like 2 people a week, which has been hard. And it's another thing that has been hard is that, like, with all the college stuff at school, I could normally just like walk into the counselor's office and be like, I have this question, I'm worried I accidentally sent everything without filling it out or something, and they'd like reassure me. But now, since it's online, it's a lot more formal, and I have to be a lot more independent and like set meetings up. So yeah, I think those are a few of the main ways that has affected me.
Thank you, Natalie. It's great to have you. Laura, you'd like to go next and introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Laura Yeager. I have a few different hats. I'm a parent of 3 kids who've gone through Austin ISD. My youngest just graduated, so we did do the online stuff this fall, and 2 of mine are in college, and we're navigating how that works as well. But I'm involved from a big picture stand in terms of I spend a lot of time advocating for funding our public schools at the legislature, for reducing focus on high stakes standardized testing, for getting people to vote. And I've been involved every morning since March with the Community Resilience Trust here in Austin, which is a group of leaders in Austin trying to elevate the voice of the Black and Brown community in our district and in our city. And I mean, I've really seen how COVID has exacerbated the inequities. So the only thing I will say is a lot of the decisions that are really affecting people on the ground are being driven by as high up as our presidential level and our gubernatorial level. And there's some stuff we can do and do better, but there's some that we're really stuck by what we're being allowed to do at a district level. So anyway, I'm happy to participate however I can be helpful.
Thank you, Laura. And even though we're going to be talking about K-12 primarily, I think inevitably we're going to have some contact and discussion about how this impacts higher education as well. So thanks for that perspective. Roberto or Lorena, whoever wants to go next?
Hey, Roberto Germán, thanks for welcoming me to this panel. I am a co-founder with Lorena of Multicultural Classroom, an organization that does educational consulting and just addressing issues of equity and anti-bias, anti-racist approach in education. And also director of the middle school at Headwaters School in downtown Austin. And so in addition to that, I'm a parent of a 5-year-old, a 2.5-year-old, and another one in December. And so COVID has impacted us in a multitude of ways, including just rethinking our whole approach with our children and how to best support their educational journey. But also, as a school leader, been really grappling with just managing, supporting, thinking about, and trying to be as graceful as possible in our planning this school year for our different constituencies and how to meet their needs in this most unique year in education. And so it's been quite the journey, and we're adjusting and changing plans every week, but trying to show up and show out for our kids.
And I'm Lorena, Germán, and in addition to co-founding the Multicultural Classroom, I'm also a classroom teacher. In the spring, when all of this happens that none of us would have ever planned for, or well, at least maybe those of us on this call, I don't know, somebody else knew. But, you know, when that happened, it really did change everything that teaching, at least for me, was supposed to be. And I think I don't know if it's a silver lining, but something that was really interesting to me was that so much of what a lot of us educators have been advocating for in terms of equity, in terms of ABAR education, in terms of what schools should be doing, all of a sudden was very possible and feasible. So, you know, that was just really interesting to watch that. And then how we've, you know, now gone back to finding ways to not do that. So that's been an interesting shift, and it's impacted me as well professionally. We decided that I would not return to the classroom this year. My hope is to be able to go back next year, but for this incoming year, for a number of reasons, and really COVID is up there, it's in the top like 3, you know, that's why I'm not able to return this fall. So I'll leave it there for now.
Well, thank you both, and congratulations to you both as well. And looking forward to hearing your comments. Nina.
So hello, everybody. I am Nina Wilson, and like all of you all, I wear a lot of hats too. So I am a teacher by heart. I've been teaching for, it sounds cool for me to say now, 1/4 of a century. And when I taught K-12 and AISD, 2 different middle schools, at Burnett Middle School for 12 years, and then at Murchison Middle School for 9 years, intentionally in middle school. I taught Spanish and AVID, and then I worked at the district level, doing professional learning for teachers in the district. And so that is my primary lens. I'm still an educator. Now I'm working with students at UT in the U Teach Liberal Arts program who are seeking certification in languages other than English. And I'm currently a guest teacher this year. So I'm teaching a class in Spanish at Murchison this year as well, so that I can experience alongside my students what COVID is doing to our educational process. I was listening to what Lorena said, and I am so agreeing. Some of the silver linings, I didn't say that I'm a parent. I have 2 Black daughters who've gone through the system. It was interesting when March hit, how everybody was talking about how much we lost. And I promise you, we gained, because my kids weren't traumatized through the educational system every day, and they were happier doing work at home. So I have a senior who just graduated this year, 2020. And then I have one that graduated 2017, who's a senior at UT. So lots of different experiences from different lenses. And I'm excited about this panel because I want to think about solutions out of the box that we haven't really scratched the surface on. I know the solution is there. We just have to put our heads together and find it. So I'm looking forward to our discussion tonight, and thank you guys for having me.
Wow, Nina, you do a lot. So it's glad to have you here, and what a number of perspectives we can hear from you. So I'm looking forward to your contributions as well. Lisa, good to have you.
Thank you for having me. My name is Lisa Flores. I live in East Austin. I have for a long time now. I'm originally from El Paso, Texas. I am the daughter of immigrants. I'm the only person in my family that was born in the US. I'm multicultural, multilingual, and I have 2 children with disabilities, and I am a disability advocate. I'm self-trained, and I'm also the graduate of a program called Texas Partners in Policymaking. It was an 8-month advocacy program that was specific to disability. With my older son, I've experienced a number of different educational settings: private school, charter school, public school, you know, de facto homeschool because there was no setting for him. So I frequently have a perspective that is unusual in that I see most things through a lens of disability access. I'm self-taught as far as legislative advocacy. I just felt beholden to try and participate in our legislative process, and just showed up as a parent and learned a lot and kind of got to know the other disability advocates. So I wear a lot of different hats and have a lot of different experiences in a lot of different areas. So I'm very happy to be here and happy to share my perspective. And I also know tons about Star Wars. So if that comes up, my Star Wars knowledge is very high. So yeah, I wear a lot. I also used to be a mechanic before I had my kids, so I can talk cars with you, whatever we want to do.
Lisa, thank you so much. And thank you for your advocacy, of course, what you've been doing over the years. And it's good to know that if we have a trivia team put together, we know who to go to on the Star Wars questions, but it's great to have you here. Looking forward to hearing you. So let's next have Cuitlahuac. If you could say hello and give us a little bit about your experience.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you for having me. My name is Cuitlahuac Guerra. I identify, or not even identify, I am a brown Mexican immigrant, naturalized US citizen. I have 3 young children, all under the age of 10, 2 of which are gonna start school this fall in some form or fashion at Pecan Springs Elementary here in our neighborhood in Northeast Austin. I've been living in Austin since 2011, living in Texas since 2005. In addition to being the father of 3 kids, I'm also a 14-year classroom teacher. And I teach I teach in the Pfluegerville School District, just north of my home here in Northeast Austin. So about 15 months ago, I became very active in advocating for public education when the school district announced its plans to close my children's schools. So that's multiple kids, multiple schools in my neighborhood. And so for the past 15 months or so, I've been on the front fighting against school closures, and now am fighting on a lot of different fronts in terms of not just advocating for public education, but advocating for the safety and security of my kids and of my own being. I think on September 11th of all days, I will be asked to return to the school building in person. And on the 14th, I'll be asked to teach in person in class. So there's a lot on my mind, but I'm happy to be here and I'm happy to share my perspective. And I thank you for the invitation.
Cuitlahuac, thank you so much for being here. And, you're bringing multiple lenses to this, which is fantastic. I just realized that I didn't introduce myself. I think I might have, but I'm not sure. So I'm Rich Reddick. I am an associate professor. I'm a full professor and associate dean for equity community engagement at the College of Education, University of Texas at Austin. I'm also a parent. Both of my children attend IDEA Palmer Park, which is a charter school, which is just not too far from where I live in Northwest Austin. And I also serve as the board chair of Montessori for All, which was the first public Montessori school in the city of Austin, in East Austin. A little bit about my experience besides being a parent. I'm a former 4th grade teacher, middle school teacher in Houston. And I am a product actually of AISD schools. I attended, wait for it, Travis, the former Reagan High School. And I graduated from the former Johnson High School, which closed in 2008, which is now Eastside Memorial. So I think we have a lot of different experiences here to bounce off. So with our start, I'm just going to ask folks, and yes, Robert, I'm so sorry. I just gave you hey, you're the guy who does the tech. Let's have Robert introduce himself as well, please.
Yeah, so just quickly, I'm originally from Colorado, but I lived in Austin to attend the LPJ school, which I graduated from last year. And now I'm living in St. Paul, Minnesota, where I'm entering my 2nd master's program in public health, which is interesting because my area of interest was there's kind of a movement right now for smarter cities, but I was kind of thinking, well, what about healthier cities? How can we think of, how do we, prepare cities for health crises? And who knew that was going to be, in the news every single day. But it's interesting. I mean, we've talked about all the levels. We'll mostly talk about K-12 today, but also graduate school has gone online, which will be a completely different experience on this side of education as well. So I'm really happy to be able to learn from all you guys today, and all of it's really applicable to public health as we go through this this pandemic and try to fix all the issues in our society at the same time.
Well, thanks, Robert. And I think it's really important to talk about education, health, housing, food justice, all those things together in concert, right? They're not operating independently. So even if you're watching this and you're like, well, I work in this sector, there's definitely a place where it intersects. And as somebody who just taught their first online classes semester yesterday, I wish you the best of luck with your online experience.
Thank you.
So let me start by just opening it up. And, I think Cuitlahuac sort of presented one of the dilemmas, right? We have intersecting identities, and we're going into classrooms, we're managing our families, and we're working as advocates. So I'd love to hear folks just, let's whoever wants to go first, how are you approaching this? What are your experiences been? What is most pressing in your opinion at this particular juncture of time? So anybody can start, and we can kind of round robin and get everybody in if they want to.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and get us started. You asked how are we approaching this? As a school leader, this is something I've been thinking about, talking about since mid-March. We didn't get a break in March. We just kind of worked through it and into the summer and made plans, changed plans, made plans, changed plans. And so, for me as school leader, that definitely has brought about a great deal of stress, like all the changes, managing the changes, but like also managing the communications around it. Was this clear enough? Oh, apparently this wasn't. Now we got to send another communication. But then, so we started the school year on Tuesday. We've been in training with our folks for the past couple of weeks, but we started this past Tuesday. And prior to that, we were having new student orientation, back to school night, meet the guide night, all these events that we would typically have. And, we have our kind of standard approach, and we had to rethink all of it. And like, oh, wait a second, we got to create a spreadsheet and make sure all the guides have the Zoom links in there. Zoom has been stressing me out because sometimes my links have not been working because I try to sync it with my Google Calendar. And so there's some backdoor stuff you got to figure out technically. And so for me, there's been heightened anxiety in terms of like, wait a second, like, are they going to be able to get into my Zoom classroom? And if not, like, how quickly can I troubleshoot this? What's the experience on the other side of it for our families, for our students? Is this going to set a tone for them in terms of their level of engagement or not? And then thinking about leveling of engagement, one thing that I've found is this mode of learning for me, I've known this about myself since I took my first online course when I did my master's at Boston College. Shout out to the Eagles, Rich. But online learning is not really my flow. And so I have to muster up a lot more energy in order to try to engage my audience. And so even in this class that I'm teaching with the kids, I have to show up and I have to be extra. Because this is, working in this format and like not really knowing how you're receiving this, or I can't, fully take the temperature of the classroom, or I'm asking you to follow up on something and I got to trust that you're actually going to do it. And I don't know to what extent you're going to do it. And so, so then we have some control issues and there's a lot of things you could argue about that, right? Good and bad about the control issues. But for me, what's challenging is like, I'm trying to control things in a way where I can influence the environment to inspire learning as much as possible. And yet I know I have so many more limitations in place. And so I know I need a community of professionals to talk this through with, to share some of their own struggles and triumphs, so that we can troubleshoot. And then I also need, I know, so our theme this year is advocating for grace. And one of the reasons we went with that theme is because we understand that there's going to be a lot of hiccups along the way. There's going to be a lot of mistakes from everybody involved. And so we need to allow there to be room for us to experience those mistakes, to learn from them, to grow from them, and to get better together in this format that's very new to most of us.
So Roberto, thank you for that. I think it's so critical what you said about the feedback, the very natural experience of being in a setting face-to-face with somebody. And I always tell my students, I am of the African-American tradition, call and response. I look at your faces. If you're smiling, I'm doing well. If you're frowning, I need to change it up. And quite frankly, you're not getting that. And there's always this delay as well, right? So just to I think that's a really key point you talked about, and also the energy. I think for our educators, you're really having to bring so much, flavor. I hear my students, my kids' teachers, and they are, like you said, extra, because I know they're bringing 120% because they want to pull the kids in, and they're doing a great job, because I actually stop and look, like, what are y'all talking about? But yes, I think this question, Nina, just to recap, is just, how are we leaning in? What's on our minds? What's the most pressing thing we're thinking about right now as the school year starts, or in some cases already started?
I'll tell you a couple of things that are pressing for me. And it just is, in the forefront of my brain. I'm sending students who are prospective teachers into classrooms. And I don't know that I want to be there right now because of what's going on. And I'm conflicted with that. I have a student who's in a private school right now, and they're full mode, kids changing classes, face-to-face all day, every day. And as a parent and as a professional, I'm conflicted, because I know that that's not something that I would want optimally in the midst of a pandemic. So I'm worried about teachers. I'm worried about options that they have, that we have, I should say, in not being in a classroom where we feel unsafe versus, the trade-off of deciding between your livelihood and your life. I think it's a really difficult place that we're in. The other part of that is the educator in me knows that we all want face-to-face learning. Like, everybody wants to be with their kids. There's not any teacher who's like, man, this is a vacation. Like, this is extra. This is a whole lot more. But in addition to that, we all also are very much aware of Maslow. And it is really difficult to learn or teach if you're worried and if you're genuinely stressed. And so even if kids are sitting in front of a teacher full face, if there's concern about how their health is going, the learning is not going to be as optimal as it would if they were, feeling safe. The other side of that coin that makes it challenging for me is I know that I sit in a place of privilege, in that my kids are able to sit in their rooms, they can close their door, the dog isn't barking, and they don't have to worry about hearing it. They're fed every day, and they can do their work, and I can come in here and do mine. And I also know that I can't control the physical building. It's not an equalizer anymore. Like, I can't control if a person has several siblings and they're crying in the back and the kid can't focus, or if several people are on the internet and the computer slows down and they're frustrated because I'm, sounding like a robot, and then I go away and then they have to come back in. Like, I can't control any of their experiences to bring those filters down so that they can actually engage in the learning. So there's so many things at play that are outside of what I can control, and I know that they're impacting how my students are learning. That's what's in the forefront of my brain. Like, if I can reach that kind of learner that's got that kind of environment, then everybody else is taken care of. And I feel like right now we're worried about mainstream. Just like we've always been. Everything is designed to make sure the kids who are mainstream are taken care of. And we're not looking at the extremes. And when I say extremes, I mean the most challenging situations, like trying to make sure that we take care of them. And again, I'm going to shout out again to Lorena when you guys were talking about just making sure that we take time to pause and take care of the stuff that this has illuminated for us. We knew it was there. Nobody was like, oh my gosh, really? Is this an issue? These are all issues that we know are there. We know there's food insecurity, right? And we know that there's discrepancies. This gives us an opportunity to do something about it. And I hope that we slow down, slow our roll, and genuinely take care of the issues.
Nina, great observations, especially about how we have to attend to other issues, which is going to bring us to the next piece we get to. But Cuitlahuac, I think you want to jump in.
I was very happy to hear Ms. Nina talk about Maslow's hierarchy and the idea of Maslow's the four Bloom's taxonomy being levels of rigor in terms of pedagogy. And they're always telling us as teachers, get up Bloom's, but Maslow's hierarchy of needs before Bloom's. And As a teacher, I usually, face-to-face and in person, bring a lot of energy. Sometimes it's explosive, literally. I think Ms. Yeager can attest to that, because I teach physics and we literally make things blow up. But with this online teaching, I'm realizing that when I'm hosting a Zoom of 28 young people, that really I need to give them space to connect with each other. And it's not even about me. It's about giving the classmates in my room a safe, comfortable place to have the interactions, even if they're virtual, that they're being deprived of. And so I try to not bring it as much. I try to just say, let's make sure we're comfortable, ask them a few questions, and then put them in the breakout rooms and just stay out and give them time and space and grace to connect with each other. And then what y'all were talking about, what Lorena brought up, how in the spring it seemed everybody was all for this anti-racist education, and now in the fall we don't have time for it. And to me that looks like requiring cameras to be on, you know? It's like in the spring it was no big deal, but now all of a sudden every kid's got to have their camera on, and I'm just like, what happened to the space for grace? And lastly, I'll say this, Ms. Nina's right. I cannot teach while I'm worried about my own kids' safety or their education. One of my children is supposed to start kindergarten, and that's a big deal. That's the beginning of their formal face-to-face education, and they can't go to the carpet and read a book with their classmates. They can't play outside in recess. They can't do arts and crafts together. It's going to be virtual. It's going to be over the computer. And I want to be there for them. I want to be next to them when they're trying to learn to read, over an iPad. But the problem is that I'm going to be asked to go back into the classroom. So you're going to put my safety at risk. You're going to put my safety at risk, and at the same time, ask me to not be there for my own child. And honestly, that's just unacceptable. How can I do a good job teaching when I'm also dealing with this uncertainty? And I apologize for my little girl screaming. She's upset about something, but that's just the thing. Like if I'm not in my house to help her and help my kindergartner, and I'm at school teaching, I'm not going to be my full self. I'm not going to be able to bring 100% of my capacity as a teacher when I'm being forced to choose between my own children and the children I'm supposed to serve. And that's a very difficult position to put me in.
Cuitlahuac, that was eloquently said, considering, and you keeping it real, because we're all at home. So thank you for bringing that reality to us. I hope your daughter's cool. But thank you for that contribution. I think absolutely what you just said about the multiple roles that everybody has, they're collapsing, and we have to be mindful of how are people able to manage and bring their best, considering all the things they have to think about. So thank you for that. Lisa, give us your perspective.
Sure, thank you. So the way I'm approaching it, or what I'm doing, is kind of similar to what I do every year. So every year, I like to say I work 10 times harder for what everybody else takes for granted. Most people sign up their kids for school and they drop them off and they trust that decisions will be made and their kids will be included. That has not been my experience with my student. So every year I prep by making an all about me sheet for my student to get buy-in from educators that my student is one of their students. So I do strengths and I do challenges, what works for me, what doesn't work for me. And I make this with my son to present to educators to invite them to consider him to be one of their students. So I will be doing that this year as well. I do that every year. So that is like a way for me to try and get connection, because frankly, there is a lot of barriers for students with disabilities. And in this conversation right now, a lot of the planning and a lot of, really high level planning and considerations are not including disability as a factor of consideration. Having your camera on, to Cuitlahuac's point, my son can't attend to 20 people at once. His disability impacts him in a way that it is going to make him incredibly uncomfortable to know who to attend to for 45 minutes, with all those spaces. So really I'm approaching it, with Maslow's, like all the teachers are stressed, everybody's stressed, and I want to have grace and I want to give everyone the room. But I'm also sort of preemptively accepting that my student isn't going to make a ton of progress this year, which is saddening, but it's also honest. I am teaching both of my sons, community living skills, how to contribute to our household, how to clean up after themselves, money skills, how to be good neighbors, just like things that they'll need as adults. They both know how to make the perfect crispy quesadilla right now, and that sounds like something that's silly, but it makes me proud. They can both cook a meal for themselves that they can be proud of. So I'm approaching it like grace and high expectations and doing what I can to be the best at-home instructor, but also kind of realizing that there's significant challenges for my students.
Lisa, thank you. That was really well said. And I think what you said, the honesty of having to grapple with what the limitations are, right? There are actually things that we're not able to do because of this new context. But you've really spoken about, well, here's how I'm trying to figure out to bring something new to the situation, which I think is really amazing. I think every parent who's working with their children at home is thinking about that. Well, is there a way I can extend the learning process beyond the Zoom interaction? And I, commend you for figuring that out. So the next question I wanted to ask is really sort of bringing together, and I said this earlier when we did introduction, I really think that folks who are interested in education as a concept have to understand that education abuts, intersects, and comes together with other sort of functions in life. And I'm thinking primarily health, housing, the financial picture, and so on and so forth. So Lorena, you want to give us some thoughts about that? Like how are those pieces of the picture kind of interacting in both your life and just the general larger sort of venues?
Yeah. I've been thinking about this for a little bit, and I've been talking with some other educators, throughout the country we're all thinking about this, right? We're all thinking about what does it mean to go back to school, whether it's virtual or in person. And I think that, the ask of let's go back in person reveals the intersection of so many of these isms, right? So, for example, to require that folks of color in particular, right? So here we have race come in, a group that we know in this country and data has shown and everything, all the reports have shown are disproportionately impacted and are disproportionately dying from this virus. To ask us to go to work is a problem, right? And then to ask us who in this field, right, this profession of education is primarily women. So now we have the issue of gender as it's intersecting with this situation. And the ask is that you're asking us, many whom are mothers or at least caretakers of other people, to put our lives at risk. So now you're further marginalizing women of color who are educators, right? So we see the way that these isms are are kind of getting mixed into this entire situation. When a person is thinking about, do I go back to school? You have to think about all of that, which you've never had to think about in the same way before, because this is so real, right? Because for us, this isn't just like some invisible virus, but we have lost people. I remember in March, the reality of, losing my grandfather to COVID on a Saturday and going to teach on Monday. And I could have taken the day off, but that would have been a whole nother, like, how do we find a sub? Like this was at the beginning of it all. And so, I made the choice to go teach, but at the same time, I'm like, this is all crazy. All of this, the whole thing is crazy. Like, what is this virus? Never getting that closure of seeing that, right? So dealing with a death and trying to mourn while also somehow in our society, like, we're pressing on, we're going to keep going, right? So I think that this, that COVID, this pandemic has revealed to us not only inequities, but the intersection of all of these systems in a way that we really can't unsee. Things that for so many of us who are marginalized was already so obvious. I would hope that as a nation, we can start to open up our eyes and really have honest conversations, right? And just be like, come on now, like, this is evident, this is obvious. And so, I think that the ask, further the ask of going back in person is absolutely further marginalizing those of us who are already marginalized in this profession. So I'll stop there.
Really well said, and I really appreciate your perspective on intersectionality, the fact that, and this is what Nina said earlier, right? Whatever roles you play, whatever identities you hold, they're all being hit differently, and some people are taking quite a bit much more on. And I love what you said. And I really, first of all, condolences about the passing of your grandfather. But even more importantly, that so many of our students are experiencing this kind of loss and really haven't had the chance to grieve like we naturally would if it was happening. But literally, people who are losing multiple family members in succession don't have opportunity to say goodbye, those kinds of things. So thank you for making that real. Robert, you had some thoughts about how housing sort of interacts with what we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, one interesting way in which housing and, you know, economics and schools opening and all these things intersect is that, you know, often the most marginalized people, especially in Austin, are living, you know, multiple families to a single family home. And what we know about this disease, and there's studies coming out all over the world. I just finished reading one that came out of Spain, that the household is the #1 place where this virus is transmitting because people are in such close proximity. But if you have, you know, a pretty small single family home and you have 12, 13, 14 people living there, you have people of multiple generations, then you could see how the virus can spread very quickly from just one person. In this case, we've seen the COVID numbers in schools that have opened all over the country. We've seen it at universities. We've seen it at, you know, the school in Georgia and such. If a kid comes home with the virus and he's living in a family or living in a home with 3 different families, you can see how the exponential spread of the virus happens and how it's much more likely to happen with marginalized communities.
Go ahead, Natalie, please.
To add on to what all of you guys were talking about how COVID sort of shines a light on inequalities. One thing that I was noticing as a student is when people turn on their video, like you can see who's sitting in front of their like lake house and who has like all their siblings in the background. And I feel like subconsciously it sort of makes you like make me think lesser of students. And I'm also sort of struggling because as a privileged student, I'm trying to figure out where my place is, like how I should help, how I should share my resources, and if like my voice should be on the table. And like what I can do. And that's been a struggle because it's hard to know sort of how to help. And if at a certain point you like try to help so much that you're not helping. So yeah.
Well, you know, Natalie, I think you just said a lot about just the awareness, right? So just the fact that you're observing this, and even in this discussion, we've been talking about the cameras. And, you know, from a pedagogical perspective, we can argue that we get to engage the students, it's helpful for us, but you just sort of made plain what the issue is, which is some folks don't have really the privilege or opportunity, or frankly, don't have the ability to have the camera on. And Lisa, you made this point as well about students with disabilities. Sometimes it's a problem as well. So I think that is a really important thing for young people to be thinking about with your peers. Is like, you know, what am I sort of taking away from this experience? And yes, how are my other classmates feeling about this? I think this is really rich that you're having this thought process going on. Now, Laura, you had some thoughts also about structural challenges and issues. So please share with us.
Sure, just a little. I mean, just looking at the big picture. So, you know, the people from the president to the governor, you know, they're making decisions about whether your schools get funded based on whether you go back to school, right? So at least the public schools and the public charters. And what should be driven, while this should be driven by health, by safety, by human needs, by student and teacher focused issues, schools need the money to be able to teach the kids, and it costs more to do it in person, to do it online, to do a hybrid, to have PPE. So while all this is going on up here and the schools are like, are we gonna get funded? Are we not? Are we open? Are we not? You know, you can't listen to the health. Then all the parents are scrambling. And as Lorena said, those, you know, especially women of color who are working, who don't have childcare, it exacerbates how our country's healthcare system is not strong and weak and accessible. It's not accessible to everyone. We don't have a childcare system. There are all these inequities that are coming to the surface. And while it's not a great time for anyone, I'm hoping, plus all the racial sort of awakening among hopefully white people, that we really can make some changes. And I think Nina mentioned it and Lorena mentioned it, and even Natalie, the fact that kids were actually able to learn for the sake of learning, not to get a grade or beat someone else, is a huge change that I hope we can make in our system, because that's supposedly we're making lifelong learners. So anyway, I just want to sort of put it all in perspective that what's driving things is not the right things, and it's become political. So thank you.
Wow, that was pithy, Laura, but it was deep, right? Because now you're talking about how do we fund schools and what's really driving our decision-making processes. Is it economic, or is it in the best interest of children and families? So thank you for making that connection. And Cuitlahuac said something earlier that I think connected well, which is just, you know, what is actually our mission here? What are we trying to accomplish here? And if we're trying to satisfy a legislative mandate, or that's our primary objective, then we're losing something else as well. And, you know, I want to be a pragmatic and realist, right? I don't want to act like, you know, we don't have to make those considerations, but when those considerations become the primary thing that drives our decision-making process, we may be gone a step too far. So let's definitely keep that in mind. So on that very point, the next thing I want to ask about is the long-term effects. I've been saying a lot in my public scholarship and in my, whoever wants to listen to what I'm saying, including my kids, like, this is not just 2020. You know, God willing, we emerge from the pandemic and things go, quote unquote, back to normal. But I'm really concerned about what will be the long-term effects of the pandemic. And I'm talking not just about what happens in education, but what happens with people's health and so on and so forth. So I would love to hear folks maybe give some thoughts about what should we be thinking about as long-term? Because I think the temptation is going to be, once we are able to go back and the pandemic is either under control or there's a vaccine, oh, that's over with now. We can move on, and it'll be a chapter in people's lives, and somebody will write an interesting coming-of-age novel about it. Nina, you've got some thoughts about what the long-term effects might be.
I have some thoughts that I want to just put in the space. And one is how we've made school the end-all, be-all, catch-all. And I think that we really need to look at our community being responsible to the parts that the community needs to do. And what is the role of school? In my estimation, I thought we were supposed to be about educating. I thought it was about learning, opening critical thinking, you know, giving kids skills so that they're able to do what they need to do, right? So what we've seen is that schools are hubs for food. So food insecurities. So now we've asked the schools to take care of kids' abilities to eat. That's a community issue, and our community needs to step up and deal with food. Like, that's what they should be doing, not schools. Second, daycare. We are not a daycare, and that's what we're being asked to do. It's not about, I really want my kid to learn. It's, I got to go to work, so I have to have my kid somewhere. We are not about being a daycare. We're supposed to be educating. So if daycare is an issue, our community needs to step up and have daycare be something that they take on. In addition to that, safety. We've been concerned about kids who are being abused, and they don't, you know, they're not, those numbers have been skewed by this pandemic. And so we were having a hard time of knowing who's being abused in their homes. Well, schools were where we were finding out and reporting who wasn't having, you know, the best of times where they are in their homes. Well, there needs to be some other agencies and entities stepping up to take care of that. We've asked schools to do everything as we've underfunded it. And so in my estimation, we come out of this with the community stepping up and doing its role so that the school can be about educating instead of doing everything for the community.
Wow. I think you saw the head nods, right? Yes, I mean, I have been marveling over this as well. I mean, and I've been, you know, my professional education career started in the 1990s. And even then I noticed, like, we were being asked to do a lot more at the same pay, at the same length of the day, but many more services that were no longer existing in other spaces. And even when people make the, you know, very appropriate observation that, you know, schools need to open so we can feed people, that is a critical structural failure that we are making that commentary. We need to get food to people versus we need to have schools open to feed people. Like those are, people just kind of say that without even thinking, well, wait, that doesn't make any sense. Schools aren't designed for food delivery, right? Even though it happens there. Lorena, talk to us a little bit more about the long-term sort of effects.
Yeah, I think one of the things that is a little scary about, the COVID is that we are beginning to learn what some of the at least recent long-term effects are, right? It hasn't been 5 years, so we don't know what this does to people's bodies after they have recovered, and it's been several years. But from my little bit of research and reading and the unfortunately numerous people that I know that have survived COVID, a couple of those is like fatigue. So there's this fatigue that goes beyond I'm tired and I need a nap, and this like lingering headache. Let's say that changes and that, because obviously things come up all the time. But my point in what I'm thinking about the physical, let's call them scars of COVID, is that we're gonna have to become a society that is much less ableist, right? A society that is considerate of people's health instead of simply their production. We're going to have to be a society that says, how is this person's health, and it not be an obstacle for employment or for joining this community, but like, how can we accommodate and support you? And I don't know that that's been the case, right? And even when I'm thinking about, as I was saying earlier, about the further marginalization of women of color in this profession as teachers, but what about the ones who have chronic illnesses, right? Who maybe for a long time had already asked for accommodations, and it just was something that didn't exist in our national imagination. Well, it's gonna have to exist now moving forward, right? So that's one thing I'm thinking about is the ways that us being able to all of a sudden pivot and teach differently, charge differently. Like now there are restaurants that can simply operate on 3 people instead of 15 people, right? So I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying that we were able to make drastic changes and proceed somewhat in March. And so, there's all these changes that we don't really know exactly what that's going to look like come 5 or 10 years, but we know at least that it's going to require this consideration of people's health as we move forward.
I mean, once again, powerful testimony. And I think about, what COVID has really done is expose that the social safety net is in tatters, right? It's been fading for the last 40, 50 years, but in truth, just the exposure of all of these different inequities. And I think you make a really strong point, and I'll let you all know that I had COVID this summer, and I luckily had a very mild case. But nevertheless, I am concerned about not just me, but my family, like what's gonna happen to us over the long term. And like I said, so far so good, but that's something we're gonna have to grapple with. And we need to have a really intent focus on resisting this issue, this idea of saying, once things are back to normal, we can not worry about the inequities you're talking about, right? In fact, we should lean into them. And I think, that's a critical point that Cuitlahuac said earlier, because I think sometimes the sort of relaxation of our, work and equity areas because we're worried about bottom lines, it's a temptation, right? Instead of saying we need to actually get into those spaces and focus on those primarily, right? It's an opportunity to reconfigure and think about what our priorities are. Lisa, please give us some perspectives, please.
Yes, so I really appreciate the mention sort of that Lorena said about like access and health. And I think that I've seen a lot of disability activists be like, welcome to our world. Now everybody's thinking about accessibility and thinking about access. And we have been fighting for this since the passage of the ADA. So I think a lot more people are like understanding the point of view of people who have been chronically marginalized for access. Because what we're talking about is access, right? Like your health is diminishing your access to whatever you may want to do, number one. And number two, long-term effects, I think that we will be beholden as a state to really examine the way we fund schools. We are really looking at the disadvantage of having an attendance-based system. So I think that long-term, we could look at a new funding system that hopefully is based on enrollment. And when we talk about school funding, I mean school funding for all students, because HB3 did not address special education funding. Special education funding is still based on placement and based on segregation. You get money according to where you learn. The more segregated you are, the more money the school gets. Those are 27 years old. And I fear that because of the COVID crisis, that funding or that goodwill to change special education funding will not be there because of ableism. They're going to be like, oh, that's too hard. We're not going to touch it until, next session or next session or next session. So it's crazy that even though it's the right thing to do and the right funding mechanism, it is largely dependent on the goodwill to change it for that student body. I also want to say that like all the problems that have existed have been magnified and amplified, right? And I think, I know this sounds strange, but I do think it's an opportunity to, keep a list of in any systems, not just, but I'm going to speak to school systems in this part. Look at school systems and look to where there's the largest inequities and whose voices are absent, and keep a list and make sure we circle back around and produce policies and systems that go back and don't let it just happen again just because COVID's gone. So in a weird way, I would like to just challenge systems to really look at those systems and look where those failures were beyond not what Nina was saying about feeding people and all that, but I mean on the actual delivery of educational services, like who is learning, who is it designed for, who is able to access, and outcomes. I find it to be, and also, and I don't mean this to be like, demanding, but we need to understand how schools are going to make it up to students that they failed. Like, it's one thing to get through it, and it's one thing to say, oh, well, it didn't work out for everybody. But unfortunately, the commonality, like we learned this from the illegal cap on special education in Texas, that Texas didn't make it up to any of those students. So I am skeptical that any system is going to make it up to students who have seriously regressed. And I'm fortunate that disability doesn't impact my son as much as other people. I know people who have children who, are on the verge of being hospitalized because they can't handle not being in a predictable, structured setting. So in some ways, there's systems to make it up to those students to be included. But my worry is that because it's the population we need to make it up to, which are not only disabled students, but marginalized students, Native American students, Black, Brown, Latino, refugee, you name that student body, that we're just gonna be like, oh, we're out of it, we're good, clean the slate. And I don't want that to happen. I want there to be thoughtful processes in place to really say, who did we fail, and have the bravery to take steps to create systems, governance, and policies to change that.
Really well said,
Yes.
Lisa. Yes, go ahead.
I might have to be the pessimist of the group, of the panel. You're talking about long-term effects. I don't know if there will be long-term effects, or at least not any positive ones. Like, you can talk about the long-term effects of 9/11, the Patriot Act, the security that we witnessed at airports. I don't think anything positive came out of the long-term effects of 9/11. So what will be the positive long-term effects of this pandemic and COVID? I don't think there will be any positive long-term effects. And I'll say that pessimistically, and you can check me on that. But like what Ms. Flores just said, that it'll be dependent on the goodwill of the nice white parents to change the system of education, to stop it from being a white supremacist system, and make sure that people are served equitably. Well, dependent on goodwill again. And then Dr. Reddick, you talk about going back to normal. We can't afford to go back to normal. That normal was bad. And so you're right. I'm very afraid that people are just going to go back to normal. And so then Ms. Lorena talked about how the pandemic exposes these issues at intersections, and I agree. It magnifies and amplifies the issues that already existed. And the issues that already existed were deep-seated, fundamental, and systemic, endemic to this country. This country was founded on values of white supremacy, and this country was founded on stolen land and built with slave labor. And so if we want to, like what Ms. Nina talked about, how we see the manifestation of that foundation playing out in schools that are now centers of food distribution for communities of color, Black and brown families that aren't being paid well enough in this capitalist society to be able to afford food and afford healthcare. This pandemic has exposed that this country is rotten to its core in terms of providing a state that provides for the welfare of its people. And so what is the long-term effects going to be? I don't know if we will, because if what we've exposed is a need for complete systemic change, right? And we can't even go from George Floyd, we'll back up, Mike Ramos here in Austin, Javier Ambler here in Travis County, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and now Jacob Blake. We've gone just a few months and nothing has changed. Nothing might ever change. So as far as what will the long-term outcome of this pandemic be, pessimistically saying, it will be another point in history we can point to and say, chance, there was some movement, there was a march, but what kind of systemic change will come about that? What kind of foundational change will we witness as a result of this? We know what needs to happen, but is there enough goodwill for it to happen? I don't think so. But I'm being pessimistic and realistic. Somebody that thinks the glass is half full should probably speak.
Well, honestly, I think you're reflecting the historical record, are you not? I'm thinking about just the sort of exacerbation of inequality and in a time when we have unimaginable wealth. If you want to check this out, just look around and look at some of these metrics we've been using to measure wealth, and about the folks who are, doing quite well in the society compared to the folks who are not. No democratic society should be applauding that. It's shameful. Natalie, you're the future. So talk to us a little bit about how you're feeling.
I don't think that necessarily we're gonna wake up tomorrow and it's gonna be like everyone's gonna be like holding hands. But I am pretty. I'm not super pessimistic because I've seen a lot of like, you look at the WNBA, you look at the NBA. There's all these players standing up, all these players who are role models for young athletes like me, who are standing up and encouraging other young athletes to use their platforms. And I think that's going to really carry on a better culture of teenagers being more accepting and actually educating themselves. So I'm very hopeful about that. And I also think another thing I think is positive is this pandemic has sort of shown how Zoom, there's a lot of problems with Zoom, but one of the good things is that it has the potential to bring people and sort of open up a new outlet to bring people together. It could also bring people together and sort of give opportunities. Like I did a computer science camp all online, and it was people from all over the US from all sorts of different perspectives. And I think that Zoom is a platform that for that is really cool and can be used to sort of bring people together. And it was a platform that we didn't have before. So I think those are some of my positive takes.
That's great. I think that's the dialogue. And so thank you for generating a sense of us thinking about what's possible. I see Dr. Suri is opining in Facebook about his thoughts about what's happening too. So I appreciate the folks coming in. So people have been super generous with their time. So I want to be mindful of that, and thank you all for being here. So as we sort of close out, I want to ask each of you to give us a closing comment. And, it can be a challenge, a prediction, a best practice, but something basically for us to think on as we sort of close this out. You look at the chat, people are kind of zooming in right now. And so this might be a good time to really say something you want to leave folks with. So I guess we can start maybe with, well, I'm not going to, who feels the spirit can go ahead and speak. It looks like it's going to be Rob.
I feel the spirit. Hallelujah. Rich, one of the things that, I was about this before, but given all the shelter at home stuff and the amount of time that we've had to spend in the household and in our immediate neighborhoods, I've noticed that it has presented opportunities to really bring back like a community focus, really bring back like, like our neighborhood is not just a space in which we dwell. Our neighborhood should be more than that, right? It should be where we truly engage as a community, that we actually know each other as neighbors. Not like, like I arrived from work and I wave to my neighbor across the street, peace, all right, let me keep it moving, like before my neighbor tries to talk to me. That we break that mold that, our society often kind of pushes upon us, right? I'm thinking about Austin Wilson's fences. I think we have an opportunity to knock down the fences and actually like come together, which is, I know it's kind of a funky thing to say during this social distancing mode. But nonetheless, to be present with one another, to think about ways that we can learn, support, grow with one another. And I think there's a number of things that were stated here that can be connected, but I am going back to Nina's comment about the school not being the space or the system that should be resolving all these different needs, including the food inequities. I'm like, well, wait a second, like if my neighbor needs some rice, we cooked up some rice, y'all bring the beans, we'll bring the rice, y'all bring the chicken. And with that, with all that we have going on, I really I'd love to see us lean into that, lean into being more in community with one another.
Wow. Lisa.
Roberto, you would be happy to know that I'm the part of like a Buy Nothing group, and it's been really beautiful in my neighborhood to see people be like I'm sick, I need food. Boom, soup is delivered to their house by people that live around them. Or I need someone to fix my lawnmower. Like there's been an ask and a give that has been beautiful to witness. So I just wanted to say that I have witnessed that in my neighborhood, and it's been really lovely to see people in my neighborhood who don't know each other just offer, anything. But what I wanted to just take away is I would just invite all the panelists and anyone viewing to really start thinking about disability and their considerations. There's a saying that people with disabilities are the largest minority in the United States, and a group that any one of us could join tomorrow through COVID, through an accident, through whatever. So I would just really like all of you to invite incorporating considerations around disability and ableism into your considerations around equity, because there's a lot of intersectionality between what happens to disabled people, and disability affects all races, all ethnicities, everybody. And what I have found from going and attending really high-level meetings to low-level meetings is frequently there's no disability representation. Like they're not at the table. They're not even in the building where the table is. They're down the street somewhere that don't even know there's a table. So I would really like and invite all of you to take inventory when you go to meetings and you have these discussions of who's there and who's not there, and really take to heart classmates. Like if your classmates and your children and your colleagues, Natalie, I guarantee you, if you're lonely, your classmates with disabilities are 10 times more lonely because they have diminished access to friendships. So just please exercise kindness and thoughtfulness, and including people that you come in contact with that you may not normally consider. Thank you.
Lisa, that was powerful. Laura, let's hear from you.
I have a few thoughts. I'll try to tie them together. One, in response to Roberto and the need for sort of community. I mean, what's really everyone's yearning for is human interaction, which we can't have right now. And I think it's forcing people to be intentional about connecting. What I do think, to tie back to education, really is the education that the educators here have been doing with our children. I really think the young people are our only hope for the future. They care about the planet, they care about equity, they care about humanity. They do not see a lot of the distinctions that we have built into our structure. And while I am revolutionary, and I'm sure I'm gonna get put on a bunch of lists that I'm probably already on, but I've been wondering for a long time what revolution we'd have first, whether it was gonna be race, whether it was gonna be gender, whether it was going to be the economy. And really, Black women lead in terms of voting, they are the intersection of all of these issues. So I'm looking sort of to Black women and to the young people to take power and, for me to follow along and be supportive. But I really think that a lot of groups, and especially I've got kids who are 23, 21, and 18, they're not interested in incremental change. We need a wholehearted change, and that is the only silver lining that I see in this pandemic, is we got to shake things up. And I think people who didn't really notice it before maybe are. So that's my hopeful but strange contribution to the closing.
Not strange at all. I think that was really meaningful. Thank you.
I'll jump in here and just say that a thought that I would like to leave is that we can't go back to the way it was, because the way it was didn't work. And we know it didn't work because we're looking at it right now. So we need to be thinking about how we can change it and make it different. And everybody needs to get in where they fit in. I mean, there's something you can do, and quit sitting back waiting for somebody else to do whatever that is. You do you and make a difference wherever you are. And if we all attack this from different angles, I mean, we're brilliant. We can come up with solutions, and it might feel uncomfortable, but everything feels uncomfortable until it's comfortable. So, I mean, we can do this. We got to. We owe it to our kids.
I think it's really, once again, another perspective about what the future holds, right? And the hopes we have. I'm just going to say that, you know, all of us have to engage, right? We can't put it on the next generation. We've got to all find a space. And I think you said that really wonderfully, Nina. Natalie, go ahead.
I guess I'm not muted. Never mind. Just bouncing off what Laura said, I really want to encourage what Laura and everyone else said. I really want to encourage my generation to actually get involved and be the change, and just try to be a leader. It's really hard, but if you just try, you'll make even just writing a petition. I'm not saying you have to get up and work 24/7, but they need us. They need us to be part of the change. And so it's really easy to just sort of sit at home and not participate, but I'd encourage people to participate.
Wonderfully said. We have a major election coming up in 60 odd days. And I think you sort of issued the challenge to folks of your age to be involved in that. Lorena.
I think maybe what I want to talk to two people groups. One is teachers that may be watching us or that will watch us later. And I think that this is the excuse that we were all waiting for to make the drastic changes, right? There were always reasons not to teach towards social justice. There was always reasons not to teach in anti-racist ways. This is the time that we can say, oh, well, I didn't know, and here we are, and look at this country, and look at the nation, it's burning. I have to do something about it. This is the moment. For those that have not been doing this work, you're late, but welcome. Let's go. The train is moving, right? So that's one group. And then the other group that I want to encourage are parents, particularly parents of color, who are making the decision to keep kids home, who are taking on that learning at home with their kids, or who are understanding that, are understanding the importance and the value of supplementing that education at home. And I want to encourage us for when we do go back in person full time, whatever that's going to look like. And if you decide to send your kids back, whether that's next fall, the year after, to own and be confident about pushing back and asking and demanding, right? That we do have a right to know what they're learning and to demand that they learn better and that their education is inclusive and restorative and anti-racist. Because if we don't do that, and then I'm going back to teachers, that's how we end up with a 17-year-old with an AR-15 driving across the street and ends up killing people. This is how. If we don't make these changes, we're going to keep seeing what we're seeing. And so I want to encourage parents to advocate for their kids unapologetically. We have a right to do that.
Ooh, you ain't saying nothing but a word.
It's hard to follow up Miss Lorena there. And I know she's speaking to me as a parent, of what I got to do. And it's uncomfortable to advocate and to maybe even put my job on the line, but everything's uncomfortable till it's comfortable, like Nina said. And I do believe I was a very loud voice of pessimism on this panel earlier. and I'm trying to be optimistic and lead with love and end on a loving note. And I believe that, yes, the solutions are intersectional, and intersectionality is not additive. It's not just, one consideration, one group on top of another. It has to be reconstitutive. I don't even know if that's a real word, right? We must reconstitute our system. And if the word constitution is in there and you're thinking we need a new constitution, I say yes, because it used to be written, with 3/5 of a consideration for some people and not at all for others. So when Roberto talks about opportunities that this pandemic presents, and yeah, the opportunities are there, like Lorena said, to advocate for complete structural and systemic change. Now more than ever, we have an opportunity to point to our society, and everyone sees it for what it is, which means now we have to take that opportunity to change it into what we want it to be and what we think it should be. And that's a society that puts people over profits, that puts our students and their needs above test scores and above funding, and just kind of reconstitutes our society into one where we're all valued, and one where we want to live in and want to raise our children in. So let's take that opportunity to reconstitute our society, please. Thank you.
That was dope. First of all, I want to say that what a fantastic panel. I think there's so much knowledge and information and humility in this group. And I think my parting thought is we got to see some folks, and the folks who are commenting, I think, are of like mind, which is wonderful. But I want to really challenge the folks who weren't watching this, right? And we all know somebody like this, right? Who, has different perspectives. And it's really about having this conversation broadly, and really about thinking about the moral aspects of what we're talking about. Let's not talk right now, this minute, about educational inequity. Let's not talk about housing inequity. Let's talk about moral inequity. And let's talk about the fact that if you hold privilege in society right now, you're morally implicated in this situation. At some point you have to sort of question whatever system you believe in. Most systems have at their core some expression of justice, right? And what we're seeing and what we're hearing from the folks in this panel is that justice is not being delivered to everybody in an equitable way. So my challenge is, how do we become a morally righteous and a correct society? So I'm thinking about Gloria Ladson-Billings and how she talks about the moral debt this country has. And it's been exacerbated by slavery, by Jim Crow, by prejudice, by discrimination, by the omission of people, Native peoples, people with disabilities, you name the groups, women. And so LGBTQ queer people, and so on and so forth. So I really want us to figure out a way to get this message out to people who wouldn't normally listen to this, and to not have them dismiss anybody in this panel as being a whack job or out there, because you all, I think, very eloquently expressed why it is you have the perspectives you have. These are not crackpot theories. These are actually based in practice and evidence. Yeah, and true inclusion is radical. And King talks about radical love. Let's go there, right? And let's not use the words of prophets and our people who contribute so much in vain and just for a slogan, but actually do something with it. So I want to thank once again the panel and everything you've said. Robert's going to probably have a little bit of a closing thought, and he's also going to talk a little bit about Urbanitus.
Yeah, I just want to echo some of the things that are in the comments on the stream right now. And that's, a couple things that, I'm excited for Natalie's generation, the way that they've already led at such a young age. The Parkland kids are always the really famous example, but you see it all over the place. I mean, you saw MLK's granddaughter, I believe, today give a really impassioned speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. So I just want to end with, there's so much value in listening, and just listening to you guys throughout the course of this has been incredibly valuable for me. So, if we could just, spread that message of listening, and I like someone say, leading with love. I'm really, I don't want to say I'm optimistic or pessimistic, but I do, believe really strongly in I'm a millennial. I believe really strongly in the generation that's already coming after me. So, and yeah, I want to thank everybody for tuning in, who tuned into our live stream here on Urbānitūs. So if you're unfamiliar with us and you're tuning in on Facebook, you could just click that Urbānitūs thing right above the video and click like. That'd be great, because we have a lot of great content coming out all the time and things are really picking up. If Facebook's not your thing, we're also on Twitter. You can go at Urbānitūs Austin, or of course, just our normal website is urbanitus.com. So that's urbanitus.com, and you can sign up for our newsletters there. And I'd also like to thank, again, the whole panel on behalf of Urbānitūs for joining in. This was kind of a last minute thing to get all these wonderful people together. And I'm really thrilled with the way that it turned out. And I think there's so many important lessons that were said today. So thank you so much to all you guys.
Thank you. Let's keep the conversation going, and especially the folks who were not in this space. Let's get them in this conversation as well.
Great.
Have a great weekend, everybody.